Welcome back to another episode of Bet On It with Jerry and Jordan. We are here and we are going to be talking about this is our final installment of our team previews, the needs. Jordan handled the solo AFC and NFC South last time. We did the West together, and then I did the East by myself. So today we're going to be doing the Norths, your Packers, your Lions, your Bears, oh my, your Bengals, Steelers. So anybody who's in a North Division, we're going to be taking care of today. But first, let's talk about some bets that we've had recently, or how you've been doing since the last time we've been on. I mean, it's only 2 days old, but baseball has started. That's your time of year. That's your favorite sport. Um, More and more NFL bets are available now. I think the
Mhm.
last time we talked, you were only able to bet on the division winners and the champion, but I think now you could start. I don't know. I didn't see them on DraftKings, but I have seen people throwing up like award winners. So that's something
Mhm.
that's starting to come out now on different sites. Um, and yeah, the Masters is on currently. They're going into round three tomorrow. Um, Tiger did make the cut, so that's nice of him to see him come back. I don't know if he's gonna. Actually, I'm not gonna say I don't know. I don't think he's gonna win. Scotty Scheffler has a huge lead right now, but it's gonna be fun to see him play on the weekend and wear the red shirt on Sunday as he always does at the Masters. But what kind of bets have you been getting yourself into, and how have you been doing?
Are you betting on golf now? Is that where we're at?
I have actually. One thing I wanted to bring up was I have been really not really successful, but I've been mildly successful live betting, not just golf, but just live betting in general. That's been my favorite thing to do now. Um, I lost a couple already today, like the Tampa Bay Lightning and Boston Bruins went to overtime. I just threw some money on the Lightning. Just I mean, it's anybody's game, 50-50 shot. They're at home. Ended up losing. The Bruins ended up winning in overtime, so that was an unfortunate loss. But um, I've I've had some pretty good success with live betting golf. There's my favorite section on there is just picking who wins a specific hole, and typically it's like two holes behind. So say Woods versus Kepka, they're at hole 9. It'll give you holes 11, 12, and 13 to bet on, and for the most part, they've all been like positive odds. Um, with the actual individual golfers being higher odds or higher payout, where and then a tie being a little bit lower, but still more than doubling your money or right around doubling your money. So, and I would say a good 70% of the time, the tie is the better way to go. The tie is the good bet. Both par on the same hole, that's the tie. So, I mean, unfortunately for me, I've done too many of those ties, and I have lost some where the better golfer had a better hole, but it's been nice and fun. I'm in the green because of it, so I've been liking that a lot lately.
Yeah, so I'll talk a little bit about baseball too. I'm not going to talk that much about golf. I will let you be the golf expert. I
I even
don't
got the
have.
hat.
Yeah, you look like you just got off the green. So I'll talk a little bit about baseball strategy. I haven't gotten full into the swing of things yet. I did a few and had a decent amount of success. On opening night, I was up a decent amount. So I look a lot at individual pitcher versus batter matchups because baseball is one of the most statistically driven sports, and you start to see trends over time. And you don't have to be a statistician to understand a lot of them. I mean, you can get into crazy, wild launch angles and weighted run average, and there's some things. There's ballpark factors, and for those of you who aren't aware of what that is, basically, so a field like Coors Field in Colorado, the air is thinner, so the ballpark factor is very positive there, just meaning that when games are played there, there's a higher likelihood that more runs are going to be scored there. So when you're betting on a game that's in Coors Field, usually you're going to see that run line a lot higher. That's just standard, because Vegas and the people setting the odds are looking at things like that. So it's not always a huge advantage to look at ballpark factors because I find that they tend to do a pretty good job at adjusting. So I try to find a little just different advantages for individual player matchups. So I'll give you an example that's coming up this weekend. I pulled up just the next 3 days of data, and I'll give you a few sites that I use to look this up too. So looking over the next few days, Julio Urias, for example, he has the players on the Rockies have 117 career at bats against him, which is a pretty good number. It's a good sample size there. And they've batted 299, so almost 300 off of him, which is pretty terrible from a pitcher's standpoint. And Urias is I'm not going to say an ace. He's a top end. I believe he made the All-Star team last year. So he's a very, very good pitcher. So to see him give up almost a 300 average to an opposing team, am I going to pick the Rockies? No, but if it's 1.5 favoring the Dodgers, which realistically, that's probably going to be the line for Dodgers games exclusively this year, just because they're kind of loaded. I would probably take the Rockies with the 1.5, honestly. I think that's the kind of game that's deceiving because you see Julio Urias, you say, this is an easy win for the Dodgers, but he's tended to struggle against the batters of the Rockies. So if you look at little things like that, you can find advantages because you see the Dodgers against the Rockies. The Rockies aren't a great team. You're going to say, that's an easy win for the Dodgers. But if you really dive into it, baseball, when you really break it down, it's the pitcher versus the batter. So if you can find little advantages like that, I think it's pretty big. If you're on a platform, so when I used to bet on my bookie, they had a lot of individual player props. I personally really liked that because you could find individual batting trends too. So you might be able to find a batter that's, not a big name, but maybe he just has great career success against a pitcher. You see that quite a bit where for whatever reason, maybe it's a curveball pitcher, but the batter's a great breaking ball hitter. There's just little things, and you don't have to know that, but you can look and say, holy cow, he's batting 400 against this guy. So a random one that's in front of me right now is a guy on the Tigers called Harold Castro. Not a big name, bats towards the bottom of their order. Doesn't even play every day, so you have to check that, obviously. But he's batting 435 against Dylan Cease, who he's going to most likely be batting against tomorrow. So if you have an individual player prop, I was looking through FanDuel. It doesn't look like they do a ton of that. So kind of depends on your platform, but it all ties together with individual batter and pitcher matchups. I'll give you a few more. Let me scroll back down to the pitching matchups. Another good one, Corey Kluber this weekend is going up. This is Sunday. He's pitching for the Rays now. He is facing the Orioles, which once again, that's a deceiving matchup. The Orioles aren't great, but they did put up a decent amount of runs last year, and they got on hot streaks scoring runs. So he's allowed a 302 average against the Orioles throughout his career. And that's not the Orioles team in general. This is breaking down the current batter for the Orioles. Mm-hmm. So even if he faced them when they were with another team, because I used to get confused by that because I would say, what does it matter what his career against the Orioles is? This is a new year, a new team. But when you dive into it, they actually break it down. So he could have, when he was with the Indians, played against somebody else that was on a different team. So I think that's also kind of important to note. But, once again, that's one of those where I'm probably going to throw some money towards the Orioles, as crazy as that sounds, especially going against the Rays. But it's a divisional matchup. Those tend to be a little more hard fought, even though it's earlier in the season. And I think I like taking advantage of little things like that. Who else we got this weekend? We have Toronto, Kevin Gausman coming over from the Giants after a really successful season, going against the Rangers, who were kind of putting on an offensive clinic the last I checked about 20 minutes ago or so. I'm not sure what the score of that game is up to. But he is pitching tomorrow. He struggled pretty mightily against the Texas batters. And if the Texas offense is starting off hot, Kevin Gausman has a cold streak going against him throughout his career. That's a game where I think I'd favor the Rangers, even though the Blue Jays are a very trendy pick in baseball overall. I've seen several people have them winning the World Series, making it to the World Series, making it very far this season. So probably a lot of money going in the favor of Toronto, which means you'll probably see even better odds in that line move a little bit towards the Blue Jays. So that gives you more opportunity to win with the Rays. Who else? I had another one noted here. Taijuan Walker's pitching for the Mets on. Actually, I had it going out till Monday, so this is on Monday, so we're looking a few days out, but why not? I'll still talk about it anyway. Another guy allowing almost a 300 average to Phillies batters this season. He was very streaky towards the end of last year, so another guy. I also mention I'll stay in that Blue Jays. Go back to that Blue Jays and Rangers series as well. Martin Perez is pitching for the Rangers against the Blue Jays, and he is actually given up the highest average of any guy pitching over the next 3 days against his opponent. So he's allowed a 324 average to Blue Jays batters over his career. That's on Sunday. So that's another one to keep an eye out on. And I'll talk a little bit about the websites I use. I guess just some generic baseball advice here. So the two big ones I use, the one that I'm reading stats off of right now is RotoWire, which is a pretty big site. You kind of have to dig for it a little bit, but if you do rotowire.com/stats, you can actually do your own filters and customize reports. So you can create your filters on what you consider a hot batter versus a pitcher. So if you want to say, if a batter, I only want to see batters who are batting 280 or higher against their opposing pitcher this weekend, it can generate a report for you. Or if you want to only see pitchers who have struggled against opposing teams, so we'll say they've given up a 280 average or higher, it'll generate a custom report for you so you can see all of that. It's free too. I mean, you could just pull it up and do it. So I think that's pretty cool. Like I said, you don't have to be, basically you're just looking at career averages. I mean, that's generically what it is, as much as you can dive into some more stats. I kind of like to keep it simple and look at.
What was that first website called?
rotowire.com/baseball/stats. And then, I have a custom filter on it right now. So the rest of my URL is a little weird, but then the other one, go ahead.
I was going to see if it shows up on the screen. Oh yeah, it does. Okay, perfect. Sweet.
Yep. Nice. Now I feel really official today.
Now we're cooking. Not a sponsor.
They should be though. All right. The other one that I have too, this is a newer one that I discovered a few weeks ago, but I really like it from just the initial few days here that I've looked at it. It's called swishanalytics.com. They do have a few limitations because they're trying to get you to subscribe to their premium content. They do a lot with daily fantasy too and optimizing lineups if that's more your taste. And that's great advice too in general. If you're building a daily lineup, a guy like Harold Castro, who I used earlier, he's going to be like 5 cents. I know that's not even a real dollar amount in daily fantasy, but literally he's going to be almost free. And he's the kind of guy who he might get you a dinger in your lineup because he's been really hot against his opponent. So I think that's a really good tool to use if you're playing daily as well. But yeah, Swish Analytics, it's a newer one. They have a lot of that same data that I was talking about with RotoWire. They don't have it where you can customize it, but I think it looks a little prettier than RotoWire. So I guess that's kind of the advantage of it. But, it's kind of up to personal preference and what you prefer. And if you don't want the customization, I think Swish Analytics kind of just tells you this is what you should look for, and here it is. If you want to tweak with those numbers a little bit, then it's RotoWire is probably the better bet. But yeah, I think that's just kind of my generic baseball advice for right now. I'll talk more about specifics and dive into a few other things as we move along through the season, but I don't think you have to know a ton about baseball to look at individual matchups like that and try to take advantage. And that's not to say don't always overthink it either. I mean, there's times where if it's an ace pitcher, so if DeGrom was healthy, I mean, I have a very hard time betting against Jacob DeGrom. No matter who the opponent is, he's a candidate to go all 9 innings and throw 15 strikeouts. And I've talked about it many, many times. Betting in general is winning over the long term. If you're trying to capitalize on winning a ton on a few parlays, sure, you might hit it big once in a while, but if you're really to track how much money you're making over the long term, you're not really making money because you're just draining it over time and hoping you get that big win every once in a while. So, yeah, I think that's it for me. You've done a little bit of baseball, haven't you?
Yeah, I was just the only thing I was gonna say is little, not really a strategy, but one thing that I looked into yesterday, opening day, was already debunked today. So I noticed that it actually won on one of the bets. It was, I don't remember if it was a profit boost or not, but I did it. Um, but 7 baseball games yesterday, 6 of the games had 0-0 first inning scores, and
Mm.
so there was a few bets out there where actually it's available for all the games. You could do first inning. You could go into whatever inning, I believe. I noticed some couple bets I've seen um, go to like the fifth inning, and they'll give you a line of like minus point five for the fifth inning. So basically, they just have to be up by a run. Seen a few of those hit, but I did for the Cubs game. So that was the first game to basically kick off the season, kick off the year, and it ended up being 0-0. And then that's the only one that I bet. But I went back today, looking at yesterday, just to kind of just see if there was any patterns, check all the different scores, kind of check who hit, who didn't, RBIs and stuff like that. Because like, but I noticed also, like I did a bet today with the Yankees, and I noticed that like I wouldn't say they're similar, but like betting on somebody getting an RBI is like just like betting on somebody getting a goal in hockey, and it just seems like it's a little harder to do. It's not something that is as clear cut and dry as like betting a line or something like that.
Yeah,
But
and I don't think that's a crazy bet either. 0 runs in the first inning. So the most runs allowed on average in the first inning for a team was 0.75. So on
okay,
average, teams are allowing below 1 run a game. So once again, there's going to be days where a bet like that doesn't work. But over the long term, if you were to bet that the score or no runs were going to be scored in the first inning over the entire season in every game, you would win money on average. So that's one of those bets where people are like, oh, it didn't work today, but it's actually not a bad bet.
well, yeah, like I was saying, the yesterday's games out of the seven, 6 of them went 0-0 in the
Yeah.
first, and then the seventh one, well, not the seventh one by time, but the seventh one didn't. And then today, like most of the games had a run in the first, so it was like kind of flip
Mhm.
flopped. It was opposite. Um, our buddy, Tony, he put in 3 different parlays. So instead of putting all 13 games onto one parlay, all 13 0-0 games, and winning $50,000 or whatever it would have been, he split it up into 4, 3, and 3, or whatever. I don't know if he bet all the games actually because it's only 10. But he did 3 separate parlays, and the first one failed right away because there was a run in the first inning, and then the second one failed like in the second game, and then the third one failed in the first game. So it was like it's crazy just how different it was from day one to day two. But I mean that's what you get with betting. If you
Mhm.
guys notice, we really haven't been talking anything about basketball. It's an awful time of year for betting basketball. There's only 2 days left in the regular season. A lot of teams are playing game 81 tonight and then have 82 on Sunday or whatever. But um, yeah, it's all 16. Well, it's more now. It's 12 and then 8 playing. So all 20 teams that are participating for the playoffs, the six top teams from each conference, and then the 4 play-in teams from each conference, they're already set. Um, so really, literally no team has anything to play for except for maybe moving up 1 spot or 2 spots. But both the number one seeds are pretty much set. Phoenix has been set number one in the West for a few games now. Um, the East is, I forgot who the East was.
The Heat
The
in
Heat,
first,
okay,
or
yeah,
yeah.
and well, they can still be caught, but there's been and Milwaukee won tonight. Actually, I don't know if it is updated. So 51-30, they got one game left, but the Heat do have a couple of games in hand. But basically, like between Milwaukee, Boston, and Philly, they could all flip flop some spots there. Um, but like the fifth and sixth seeds are set. Even the play-in games are set. They might be able to jump one spot. So tiny bit to play for. I don't want to say that there's nothing to play for. Maybe you get one extra home game if you move up that one spot, but it's really hard this time of year. Like teams are just trying to those 10 teams from each conference are just trying to get into the playoffs healthy
Mhm.
and have their bench there for them because we're getting into 7 game series now and or well first the play-in games and then getting into a 7 game series, so they just want to have their best players available to them. So you might see, so I mean more often than not the better team is probably going to win. It's safer to do the money line. Obviously, if you feel like doing the points, it's a little bit of a risk. But I would probably steer away from player props right now.
Mhm.
Betting on Giannis to get 30, he could be pulled in the second half. Betting on Embiid to get 10 rebounds, he could get pulled in the second half. So it's stay away from those right now. And for, like I said, there's only 2 days left in the season, tomorrow and Sunday, and then when the playoffs start, we're back to full force with betting different player props and getting into parlays and stuff like that. But um, yeah, I've kind of been staying away from the basketball the past couple days. I don't know if you put anything into basketball, but just I mean for that reasoning, I'm not going to try to mess around with trying to guess who's going to play with their seventh and eighth bench players on the court at the time.
Yeah, no, I haven't as much. And NBA has been so far with betting legal in New York, my number one sport, actually. I made good money with the NBA this year. But yeah, I mean, especially the Thunder are a perfect example. I mean, they legitimately were just like calling guys off of the street who were scoring like 20 points a night, and it just becomes wildly unpredictable. And like you said, really the only battle right now is for the 7, 8 seed in the East. The Cavs, the Nets, and Hawks are all really close. The only reason that's kind of critical is because if you are in the 7, 8 position, you potentially you're facing a double elimination situation. Basically, you can lose your first play-in game and still have an opportunity to make it. So, gives you a little bit of a safety net if you're able to clinch one of those top 2 spots in the play-in tournament. But that's really it right now. I mean, either way, they're still in the play-in tournament. It just is more of a safety net for those 3 teams right now if they're able to move up or down.
And since we last talked, New York City has allowed unvaccinated players to play, so Kyrie has been able to come back and play home games. Um, that's, I mean, part of the reason why they're in the spot that they're in is because he hasn't played half the games, and but now they're pretty much fully healthy. I can't think of a significant injury that they got on that team. The Cavs, I mean, they're still without Jared Allen and Evan Mobley, so it's going to be interesting to see how they go into the playoffs. But um, yeah, the Nets they've been looking good with Kyrie back, playing being able to play at home. Durant, I mean, you can't really stop him. He needs to get. I think they need to give him more minutes actually. Um, other than that, baseball and hockey, they're well, hockey's kind of gearing down towards the end of the season too. Um, notice that. I mean, I think we talked about this off camera, but notice that baseball, most 90% of their lines, 95% of their lines are going to be the 1.5. Correct?
Yep. Yeah, almost always. Yeah.
All right. I believe that is it as far as the Masters go. It's like I said, it's fun to see Tiger back. For the most part, I mean, I don't want to say that it's. I mean, it's still anybody's game. It's you can't say that because a guy is 5 strokes ahead after the 2 first days that he's going to win it all. But I mean, Scheffler definitely looks really good. I don't actually. I want to look it up real quick if you want to fill some time. Um,
Well, I was really looking forward to you analyzing and breaking down some golf swings, but I guess that we're not doing that anymore.
oh no, it's I don't have all that information, but Scotty Scheffler actually, I actually threw some money on this bet too. But even though I don't want to say so far ahead, he's 5 strokes ahead right now. He's still positive odds to win, which is it's plus 100, so it's not like anything crazy, but you basically throw 50 bucks on it, double up your money if you feel like confident that he's going to win. He's been playing like he's been playing. It's not even one of those this guy just came out of nowhere and just started taking over the Masters and then he'll be disappearing to the wind. Like this guy, he's been number 1 for a while now. Um so it's not a big money making bet, but you could double up your money by throwing whatever you want on him. Scotty Scheffler, he's plus 100. A lot of times, like around this time, like the cut list has been made, you're gonna see like the favorites be negative odds. So this is one of those rare opportunities where you don't have to throw a lot down to see a little bit of a return. 50 bucks, 20, I mean 25 bucks. Throw 25 bucks in there to get a $25 free bet if he wins. Unfortunately, I mean, it's still there's a chance that he doesn't, but it's basically like doing one of those free boosts that you get, and it's not guaranteed, but there's really good chances that it's going to happen. So throw
I'm
some
gonna
money
do
on
it
him.
because Jerry said it's guaranteed.
Yeah, guaranteed. Come see me if it doesn't hit. It's been fun though. I mean, I from my real life work job, I've been off for I'm off on Thursdays and Fridays, so I've actually been able to sit down and watch it and not just go in blind betting on my phone while I'm sitting at work. So it's been pretty cool. You ready to get into some football talk?
Yeah, whatever that is.
Yeah, it feels like it's been gone forever. Oh, so
I mean, it is April though, so it's the NFL draft right around the corner.
they do have DraftKings has they have a player future, the one that they got up right now. And as the offseason goes on, they're going to add some more. But right now, you could bet on who has the most rushing yards. Of course, Jonathan Taylor comes in with plus 500. He's the favorite. Derrick Henry behind it, plus 550. Dalvin Cook, Nick Chubb, and Najee Harris round out the top 5. Um, any anything you want to say about those, or would you throw money on any of those 5 to lead the league? I mean, and then Mixon's number 6 at plus 1,200. I've been seeing his name actually the past couple of days floating around out there. They've upgraded their O line. They have, and we're probably, I don't know if we're going to talk about him specifically today, but we are going to talk about the Bengals because they're in the AFC North. If I were to throw a dart out there that's not the top 5, I'd probably be Mixon, number 6 at plus 1,200.
How dare you say that out loud?
Well,
No,
Zach's
yeah,
not
I mean, I
listening.
think, yeah, he's not. I hope that, oh, I lost my train of thought there. I started thinking about Joe Mixon. Yeah, I mean, their offensive line is going to be vastly improved this year, so it probably is a pretty solid bet. I mean, I don't mind throwing it on Jonathan Taylor too, honestly. I know plus 500 isn't great for a futures bet like that, but I mean, their offensive line is still going to be elite. They're going to be relying on him just as much as they were last year. I don't care if Matt Ryan is there. If anything, that helps him. It takes a little bit of the pressure off of him. Maybe faces less stacked boxes. So you could look at it either way. But yeah, I mean, not that it's a guarantee, but for season long bets like that, and I think I'm going to do it with the Super Bowl this year. I tend to throw some money on, like 5 or 6. That way you're kind of hedging your bet and you're not putting it all in on one guy. I'd rather throw in 50 bucks on 5 guys that I like, and yeah, that's $250, but all it takes is if you hit on one of them, you're pretty much in a good situation, depending
Yep.
on what the odds are on the one you hit. So I prefer to hedge it that way. I see a lot of people are like, I'm just going to throw everything in on Najee Harris, but yeah, I'll dive into a little more of those as we get closer to the season. But yeah, I mean, I won't say anything else. I have a few others that I would potentially, but I don't want to throw it out there yet because I'd seem crazy.
Because you don't want to say Mixon on camera either, huh?
Oh gosh, no, I'm gonna leave that to you.
All right. All right. So let's get into the NFC North and the AFC North. Their team needs and a player or two that we could see them drafting with their picks in the first round. Since we've last talked, I mean, there has been some movement. I believe Adams was still with the Packers. I believe
Hmm.
Watson was still with the Texans. So those two are have been affected since then. Adams has moved over to the AFC West with the Raiders. Watson is now in the division that we're talking about today with the Browns. They've also signed Jacoby Brissett. They've signed another quarterback today. So I mean, they just have a bunch of quarterbacks in that quarterback room, and who knows? We don't even know who's going to be under center week one with the potential suspension and with the Baker Mayfield fallout and all that stuff. So, but we'll get to the Browns in a little bit. First on the docket is going to be the Lions. They were the second worst team in the league last year. I actually forgot to bring up their losses. Actually, hang on one second. You can start.
Oh my gosh, will you hurry up? Well, they acquired DJ Chark.
Yep.
They lost Trey Flowers. Those are the two
I think
biggest
Trey
ones.
Flowers signed in Cincy today, didn't he?
Yeah. So the
All right.
Bengals have been very active, to say the least.
So I got their ads. They brought in Chark. They brought in Mike Hughes, the cornerback. He's not bad. Jared Davis, and that's pretty much it for bigger names that they brought in. They don't really have a lot of free agents that they. I mean, besides the ones that you named, there's not really a lot left over that they need to sign or that are big losses. Jared Goff is still their quarterback, at least until April 28th when the first round of the draft is. We'll see what happens. I don't think they take one at 2, but they have a 32nd overall pick, which is the only time that they'll ever get a 32nd overall pick is via trade. Um,
You don't know that.
well, as long as Jared Goff's there, I do. All right. So they pick number 2 and they pick number 32. They just across the board, they just have a bunch of needs. I mean, usually we go over the top 5 needs. Even though they brought in Chark and Amon-Ra St. Brown I guess we could talk about what they don't need. They really don't need a running back, and they really don't need a tight end. Outside of that, they kind of need a little bit of everything. Even line, O-line they could use. They took Penei Sewell last year at 4th overall, I believe it was. Not bad. I mean, that's kind of where that's who a lot of fans wanted Cincinnati to take to protect Joe Burrow, but ended up being with the Lions. Other than that, I mean, Goff is probably going to be their quarterback. Even if they do take one this year, Goff is probably going to be their quarterback this year, but they still need to find somebody beyond him. They don't. I can see them picking up a wide receiver or 2 in the draft. It doesn't necessarily have to be in the first round. I think 2 is a little bit too early, anyways. We'll see who's there at 32, but I do have another idea for them at 32. But like I said, Amon-Ra St. Brown, DJ Chark, they're decent enough to go along with Jared Goff, and they still got Josh Reynolds, who was Jared Goff's partner in crime in LA too. So, and Quintez Cephas, he missed a lot of the year last year with an injury. He's still not a rookie, but he's still got that young player hype. So it's not terrible for wide receivers. It's not the greatest room, but it's definitely not the worst room. I could probably name 2 or 3 worse rooms than the Lions. I mean, the Texans are probably worse than them as far as wide receiver rooms go. But as far as who I could see them taking with their 2nd overall pick, um, it basically just comes down to best available, and best available is going to be everybody except for the 1st overall pick. Um,
I
but
like that analysis. Let's move on to the next team now.
Aiden Hutchinson and Kayvon Thibodeau, both the edge rushers. I think it's going to be unless Jacksonville goes with Evan Neal to tackle. I think Jacksonville's going to go with one of those edge rushers. Lions take the other one. And then at 32, I think they go quarterback Desmond Ritter out of Cincinnati. I really like him there. I like the idea of taking your quarterback in the first round, even though this is a weaker class. You get the 5th-year option out of him. Let him learn for a year under Goff. I don't know if that's what you want him doing, but let him learn for a year under Goff.
Why would you ever say that out loud?
It kind of like he doesn't.
What is he learning? Not what not to do.
Exactly. He doesn't necessarily remind me of Lamar, but it kind of has like Lamar written all over it, where they moved up into the first round to get him to try to learn. Unfortunately, and fortunately, I guess Lamar was put into action his first year, and it's been pretty good ever since. But um, like Ritter doesn't need to start from day one, but you do get the extra year out of him if you take him at that 32nd pick. So I got Hutchinson or Thibodeau, whoever's not taken with the first overall pick. If the Jags go Neal, then I'm going to say Hutchinson. That's the edge rusher out of Michigan, and then at 32, Desmond Ritter.
Yeah, and I think that I mean I basically agree with everything that you just said about them. I don't like how you bashed their the Texans wide receiver room. That feels like a dig at Brandon Cooks, but I'll allow it.
I'm not saying
Um,
Brown's better.
I don't want to even respond to that, but now I really lost my train of thought. But yeah, I mean, I will add that their offensive line actually was pretty darn good last year. So they struggled a little bit early on in the year, but they actually finished with the 13th highest rating by the end of the year. Taylor Decker came back to play one of the tackle spots for him, which that was kind of their weak point up until that. And after his return, they were a top 10 unit. So actually, this is a pretty good offensive line, which I really like for a young quarterback. So it would be wise of them to take a quarterback in the first round. They are the kind of team that has so many needs that if I was them, I would probably trade out of number two. I would trade down to a team that's desperately looking for a quarterback. A team like the Panthers might be desperate enough to trade away the farm and number six in order to trade up to get a guy. You know, I've heard some rumblings about the Saints who have multiple first round picks now, the Steelers potentially looking for their franchise guy. Because, I mean, you're right. I would throw in their line. I really don't think they need a ton on the line. They could throw in maybe a depth piece later on in the draft, but they really don't need to address that in the first two rounds. So their line, running back, that's pretty much where their strengths lie in tight end. Um, so I think that's if I was them personally, I would trade down. Somebody would pay the farm to trade up and take Malik Willis or whoever the number one quarterback is on that particular team's board. So that's the direction I would go in. A name that I've seen that's trendy right now, because I believe it probably will be an edge rusher if they don't trade out of it. Trayvon Walker from Georgia as well is being thrown into the mix. He had he's had a strong offseason, and he's looking like he'll go in the top 5 now, and a lot of people have him right behind Aiden Hutchinson, with Thibodeau sliding down a little bit. So I think that's probably the direction they go in at number 2. 32, it depends what quarterback's left on the board. I could see Desmond Ritter potentially going a little higher than that, but whether it's Howell or Matt Corral, I and like you said, that was the point I was going to bring up too. It's a huge advantage taking them in the first round, making sure that you get that fifth-year option. Realistically, they do have Jared Goff's a starting quarterback in the NFL. As much as we make fun of him, he's number 32, but he's still a starting quarterback in the NFL. But he is serviceable right now. It does, like I said, I really like the situation for a young quarterback, honestly, because the number one thing I look at is, does the team have a solid offensive line? And they do, and it's actually fairly young. So it's not a bad spot for a young quarterback. They have a young running back. They don't have great weapons, but St. Brown showed potential. Hawkinson is a nice safety blanket. If they can snag another guy in the second round, because they do, I would anticipate them looking at wide receiver with that second pick in the second round. You're going to see a lot of value there. Sometimes you'll see a guy like T. Higgins slipped out of the first round and was the first pick of the second round a few years ago. You see a guy like that slip out of the first. So I think that's where they go in the second round, but probably looking at Trayvon Walker at 2, and like you said, or Aiden Hutchinson if the Jags don't go in that direction, and then some sort of quarterback at 32. So I had the same thing.
All right. That's the only thing that I disagree with you on is teams trying to trade up to get their quarterback, because we basically just named 4 players, 3 of them being edge rushers and then one of them being the tackle. So it's like I think that the first end of the board is we're not going to see a quarterback till probably like where do the Redskins draft 10th, I think.
A lot
But
of
even
people have Kenny Pickett going 6 to the Panthers.
to the Panthers, yeah, but Sam Darnold thinks he's a franchise quarterback, and
I don't care what Sam Darnold thinks.
what Sam Darnold thinks is the truth. All right.
I mean, I also never thought the 49ers would trade up and trade future first round picks for Trey Lance. So, I mean, if
Outside
somebody
of
loves
six,
Malik
though,
Willis,
outside of six, it's going to be. I think the first 10 picks outside of the Panthers is non-quarterbacks, and then
most likely. But let's say, what picks do the Saints have now? They have like 16 and 18, something like that.
yeah,
I mean, if they were to package up two of those picks in a future pick, I would think about it at least.
yeah. I mean, it all depends on how they feel about these guys too, because we're nobody knows how this class is, but everybody's saying that it's one of the weaker classes. So we'll see.
People
We'll
get
see what
desperate
happens.
for quarterbacks.
Yeah, I guess so. All right, next up we got the Minnesota Vikings. They picked 12th overall. Um, they are keeping Kirk Cousins. He is. I think he restructured his contract. They brought in Zadarius Smith from their rival, the Packers. They lost Tyler Conklin to the Jets. Harrison Phillips. They brought in the defensive tackle from the Bills. Um, brought in Jordan Hicks from the Cardinals. So a lot of defensive moves so far. The three moves that I mentioned that they brought in are all on the defensive side of the ball. They are keeping Patrick Peterson. He was there last year, but they're bringing him back for another year. Um, they did lose Nick Vigil, and then a couple names that are still on the not signed list. Anthony Barr is still out there. Sheldon Richardson is still out there. Everson Griffin, seeing out there. Um, so while they brought in all these, wait a second. Yeah. So while they brought in all these defensive players, they still have other defensive players that were there last year that who knows what's going on with them. They need what did I say? They picked 12th overall. They could use some offensive line help. It looks like they want to build up that defense too. So at 12, you're still going to get a good. You're going to have probably most of the cornerbacks available. Maybe Sauce Gardner's gone at that spot, but all the rest of them should still be available. We already mentioned, like I said, the three edge rushers. Those guys are probably gone too, so they might not be looking at edge at that spot. Even though there are a couple other edge rushers that are. I mean, this is a pretty deep class for edge rushers.
Mhm.
I think that 12 is probably a little bit too early, especially with. I mean, Kirk Cousins isn't necessarily old, so I don't think they need to find his replacement just yet. Eventually, they're going to need to find him, and it might not be in this draft, and it might not be in the first two rounds or whatever. They might be able to find a project in the third or fourth round, but they don't have to. They don't have to waste a pick, but they don't have to spend a pick on a quarterback. But pretty set at running back with Dalvin Cook. Their wide receivers, I think they got pretty much 1 or 2 years left of Adam Thielen, so that's always a way that they can go to pair opposite of Justin Jefferson, although KJ Osborne has kind of stepped up a little bit last year. Did mention that they lost Tyler Conklin, but I don't think a tight end is going to be going at 12th overall. So with all that said, I think that their best bet, and I really want him to drop to Buffalo, but I don't think he will, especially after his good pro day. Derek Stingley, cornerback out of LSU. It seems like that's the way that this new coach wants to go, is build up that defense. The offense, like I said, it's not bad. If there's I mean, there will be offensive linemen there. They're only picking 12th, so it's only 11 picks before them. But they I think they want to build up this defense, get it back to what, for the most part, we know that the Minnesota team is. And then they have the talent already on offense with Cook and Jefferson and Thielen, and Cousins is a slinger. He gets all the hate too. I mean, I think he might get just as much hate as Jared Goff does, but he's a decent quarterback.
But Jared Goff deserves it.
Fantasy standpoint, he's a good quarterback. So they don't necessarily need anything on the offensive side. Not with the 12th pick, unless you're beefing up that O line. But outside of that, like I said, Derek Stingley, cornerback at LSU.
Yeah, Stingley is the most likely pick. There's really two directions in my mind that they can go here. Corner is one of them. That was a weakness on the defensive side of the ball for them. They really need offensive line help. I mean, that's their number one need. The only problem with this pick is it's kind of a weird spot where I think it might be reaching on most of the linemen that may be available because especially if Charles Cross goes in the top 10 or well, I guess the top 11,
Yeah, get it right.
I'm not sure who else they would be looking at that spot. You have Linda Baum, you have Trevor Penning, who are the next few. I haven't seen either one of those guys go that high, but at the same time, I could see this being a spot where people don't have one of those next tier linemen going this high. But the Vikings were a bottom quarter of the league offensive line last year. It's their most glaring weakness. I mean, offensively, they were pretty solid overall, but I mean, it was pretty obvious against good defensive lines how bad that offensive line was. So, as much as I think Stingley, if he's there, is a better pick just based on value, my gut is telling me this is a spot where they're going to reach on a lineman unless Cross is there, and I think that's a good spot for him. I've seen him literally go anywhere from like 5 to 16, 17. So if Cross is there, I think that's the pick for him. But if the top three linemen go all before this pick, then I think they're going to have to reach a little bit. That's just what my gut is telling me, just because they beefed up that defense so much this offseason. Where not that they're going to get a great corner in free agency now, but a lot of people were predicting a corner to go there because they thought Patrick Peterson was going to be gone. So at least with him back, I mean, it's not an improvement, but it's better than we thought it was going to be because at least they have a serviceable guy there. So, yeah, I still think they should go with a lineman.
Do you think eventually they well, not eventually, but do you think they grab a quarterback sometime in this draft? Or I mean, they got Kellen Mond last year.
I was gonna say probably not. I kind of was intrigued by Kellen Mond last year. Obviously we haven't been able to see his development because he hasn't really gotten to play. But yeah, I don't think so. I think that unless with a new head coach coming in, unless he wants to go out and get his guy, I don't think it's quite the time for it. This is a team with Kirk Cousins that can they compete for a Super Bowl? I mean, I wouldn't go that far, but do I think this team is a playoff team? I definitely do, and especially if they can shore up that offensive line, I think they're at least a playoff team.
It's I don't want to say it's a wide open division because I mean Aaron Rodgers is still in the division, even though he does have a lack of weapons now. But it is a little bit more open of a division,
I
and
think they could win the division.
with
Yeah,
Detroit being Detroit and Chicago turning over to their rookie quarter or their second year quarterback who's practically a rookie, and they still have a bunch of needs. It's gonna be interesting between Minnesota and Green Bay. Next team we got up on the list is over in the AFC North, the Baltimore Ravens. They're going to be picking 14th overall. A lot of bad luck with injuries last year. I mean, from Lamar, I think their whole secondary was out at some point or another. They lost two running backs within a couple weeks of each other, not even a couple weeks of each other in training camp between J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards. Lamar went down for a couple games during the year. All their corners and their whole secondary was out for a little bit. Bateman missed a bit of the year. I mean, the only constants on that team last year were what Hollywood Brown and Mark Andrews, and that's about it. Patrick
yeah,
Queen was pretty solid too, but so the biggest name that I see that they brought in free agency is getting into that secondary. Marcus Williams, they brought him in over from New Orleans. They brought in Morgan Moses, the right tackle from the Jets. But they didn't really lose a lot either. Calais Campbell is still out there. Sammy Watkins is still out there. The couple of the retread running backs that they brought in to fill in for Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins are still out there with Latavius Murray and Devonta Freeman, but not a lot of huge, like big name players on their gone list. They definitely have some holes, like most of the teams do. They pick 14th overall. Their biggest needs on offense really are just I mean, staying healthy really, but keeping Lamar upright. But I wouldn't say that O line is a huge need. I mean, every team could use offensive linemen. I don't know if they go with one at 14. We're kind of in the same boat as Minnesota, where obviously if those players that you mentioned are gone before Minnesota's pick, then they're going to be gone before Baltimore's pick. So unless they
Mhm.
move up for an offensive lineman, on the defensive side of the ball, like I said, they picked up Marcus Williams. Um, Baltimore has always been known for defense. That's the way that I could see them going. The biggest one, if we brought his name up a couple episodes now, and it just seems like his name just keeps on dropping further and further down the list. But I got Jordan Davis, the defensive tackle, and I think that's right around the cutoff of where he's going to go. When we talked about the West, I think we had him going to the Chargers at 18, but now I mean 14, 15 seems like that's right around where he's going to go. I mean he's the number one defensive tackle in this class. He's got all the skills, he's got all the speed, all the talent. That's probably their biggest need is defensive tackle on that defense outside of keeping the secondary healthy. So I saw you make a little face when I said it. You probably agree, but do you agree?
Yeah, and I mean, I agree that that's the pick for him, but I still don't agree that he's going this late. But I mean, whatever. I guess I just think that no, I've said a few times I think he's gonna have a career like Vince Wilfork does, and I don't know what it is, and people, I don't know why people are undervaluing him. I know that there was some concerns with his durability, but I mean, Vince Wilfork seemed to be okay for an entire career, arguably, and maybe a future Hall of Famer. So, um, I just I think that he has some of the most upside in this class, and I'm still maybe I'm a little biased, but that's okay. Yeah, I mean the Ravens though, they're known for making picks like that, where a guy slips a little bit, and every I swear this happens every year. A guy starts slipping a little bit, and the Ravens start creeping up on the clock, and you know they're going to take him. They're just a very savvy team when it comes to the draft. They have 10 draft picks this year too, which is among the most in the league. I don't know how they acquire these draft picks every single season, but they do that every year. They build through the draft, and that's why they have long-term sustained success. But yeah, I think Jordan Davis would be the top pick for them. I could see them taking another linebacker, going with Devin Lloyd here potentially, taking the number one guy in the class. Patrick Queen, he's still young, but he's been a little disappointing. You can't necessarily go just by the numbers with him. When you watch him, he's just, and maybe it's because of the hype of him being the next great Ravens linebacker. That's probably a part of it. But he hasn't been, that Pro Bowl all perennial guy that we were hoping he would be early on. So they play a 3-4, so they do have another spot next to him that they could fill in. So I would be tempted, and they kind of have a hole there right now. If Devin Lloyd's there, I don't think that would be a bad pick either. But those are the two directions I could see him going in, and thinking really based on their needs. I don't know what else they would need. Potentially an edge rusher, depending on who falls. I've seen Jermaine Johnson go there a few times, but I just have a feeling Jordan Davis will go there. I think it's good value for him, and the Ravens, I don't think will let him slip any further. There's, I think, 0% chance Jordan Davis would slip past this spot.
Yeah, I think he's got to go there. I mean, you could even possibly see somebody in the 20s jump to 13 just to try to get him because I know
Yeah.
Baltimore might be looking that way. Um, Another side note from the Ravens is they have been talking to, and I think they're on the edge of signing Melvin Gordon, which
Oh yeah.
for from a team standpoint, from an actual football standpoint, that's not a bad move. From a fantasy standpoint, I personally don't like it because then you're
If you
cutting
have
into
a J.K.
Dobbins.
Dobbins share in dynasty standpoint, just close your eyes and close your ears.
J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards is supposed to see a little bit more work,
Gosh,
and
I love Gus Edwards. That guy isn't getting any love.
then doesn't want to come out.
I didn't know Gus Edwards made you so upset. I'm sorry that
I'm
we brought
allergic to
him up.
Gus Edwards. I think that's what it is. And then, of course, you got the threat of Lamar taking touchdowns too. So it's gonna be pretty rough if you're looking at three running backs unless Gus gets cut in camp, but 3 running backs and Lamar trying to share 20 rushing touchdowns, and that seems like a lot, but 10 of them go into or 8 of them go into Lamar, and then you got 12 split up between 3 running backs. It's pretty rough. Um,
For sure.
the next team up is the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Ooh.
They couple names that they lost. They lost Juju Smith-Schuster. He signed with KC, which is actually a big boost for KC now. Well, not a big boost. I guess it's a decent boost because they lost Hill. So I mean, obviously, you're putting Hill up against Juju Smith-Schuster, then it's a loss. But Juju does come in and help out with the loss of Hill. They brought in Mitch Trubisky, who could be the bridge quarterback for them. They brought in Miles Jack. I think that's their biggest move. James Daniels, the guard, and they brought in a center to Mason Cole. So they did, I don't want to say beef up the O line because it's not like household names, but they did definitely help out the O line. O line was definitely a huge factor last year into them being not good and leaving Big Ben. Um, besides Big Ben's arm, but it was pretty rough for them last year. They also lost James Washington. I forgot about that one until I just saw it right now. They lost James Washington to Dallas. Joe Hayden is still out there. Joe Schobert is still out there. Eric Ebron is still out there. Terrell Edmonds is still out there. So a couple bigger names that they have yet to sign still on the free agent list. I guess if you want to take the lazy way out, you could say that their biggest need is quarterback with Big Ben retiring. But they did bring in, like I said, they brought in Mitch Trubisky. Is Mitch Trubisky the long-term future starter? Probably
Yep.
not. So you could still go with a quarterback at 20. But I think that Mitch could be good enough to and to be honest, I don't think that what they're gonna do is gonna have. I mean, they're not gonna be picking in like the late 20s next year, so they could still. They don't have to go with quarterback at 20, and they could still potentially get a quarterback in next year's draft class. So they don't have to. They don't have to go that route. But I, with the addition of Trubisky, they still got some pretty good wide receivers with Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool. One of the best young running backs in Najee Harris. They, like I said, they added a little bit to the OL, but I think I think they still go offensive line. And we've already mentioned a few names that probably could be gone by that time. So the next one that I'm showing up on the list, and tell me if you agree or not. I originally had Lindebaum to them, but he seems to be climbing up lists a little bit, so I'm not gonna go with him. I'm gonna go with, if my page would load here,
Drum
Bernard
roll.
Raymond, center out of Michigan. He's the next offensive lineman that's going to be up there. Like I said, they could go quarterback with either Kenny Pickett or Malik Willis. Honestly, that's probably the safe bet if you wanted to bet it. But I think that they go with lineman Bernard Raymond out of Michigan.
If they don't take an offensive lineman, every single person in that front office should be fired immediately because that offensive line was embarrassing last year.
Well, they
And
added
yeah,
to it,
Ben,
like I said.
what?
They added to it, like I said.
No, not enough. That offensive line was embarrassing, and they didn't make moves that convinced me that it'll be much, much better. So they need I mean, I think they brought in interior guys, right? They signed a
They signed
center
the
and a guard.
yep.
So yeah, they have a huge hole still on the outside. So if they don't take a tackle here, I think they're stupid. And I just it was the this. I mean, when you think about it, you just listed it out. They don't have many holes as a team. Their defense is good. They could use another corner too. I could potentially go in that direction, but this team is very well rounded, and they're really probably a good offensive line and quarterback away. So if they decide, that's why I wouldn't have a problem if they want to be a little aggressive and trading up and getting a Malik Willis because they believe that's their guy. I don't have a problem with that because I think that they're that close to being a potential Super Bowl contender away. But if they're not going in that direction, they're just going to stay put at 20. I would be, and I was thinking about it when you were talking. Linderbaum, I think would be my strong preference to go to the Vikings, and I haven't seen him go that high. But those Iowa line, I mean, Iowa's a lineman factory, so I think that plays into his benefit as well. So I don't think he'll be here. You're probably looking. Um, the next few I had were Kenyon Green from Texas A&M, Zion Johnson from Boston College. They are kind of going back end of the first, early second, but I think that the Steelers need a lineman so badly that they should reach on whoever they think has the most upside. I know that's crazy and I'm all about value, but I think it's such a glaring need for them that they need to fill it with this pick. So that would 1,000,000,000% be the direction that I would go. And Trevor Penning, same thing. I don't think he'll be there. I think he'll probably go a pick or two or three before this, if not higher. So yeah, I would probably go with. We'll go Zion. Actually, we'll go Kenyon Green because he's from Texas A&M. I could see old Jerry Boy going in that direction.
Jerry boy, we're talking about Pittsburgh.
Oh, Jerry. Yeah. Oh my gosh. We're talking about. I was looking at this mock draft where they took Kenyon Green. So I'm reading and.
You're such a silly goose. Yeah, it's gonna be one of those teams that moves up to get a guy too, because it's really rough around that 20 spot. They're like we both mentioned that they don't have a lot of holes, they don't have a lot of needs. So move up and get a need instead of staying where you're at and just picking best player available. Because they're if we do see a run on edge rushers and then we see a run on linemen, then you don't want to be SOL with not grabbing a lineman. So I think that they could jump up too, unless they think that Pickett or Willis is their guy, and then they stay at 20 and grab them. But then even then, you think a few quarterbacks are going in the first round, so who knows which one's there at 20
It's
if they
crazy
even
to me.
stay
I've
there.
seen some mocks where like 5 quarterbacks go. That would be insane to me.
Yeah, in this class too. The next team we got is the Packers. They now pick at 22
Mm,
after trading with the
mm.
Raiders. Devontae Adams is gone. Their original pick was 28, but they are next on the list because they pick at 22. They lost Adams. They lost MVS, Valdez Scantling. They've lost Preston Williams, I believe. They did lose
Yeah.
Preston Williams, right? Yeah, we just talked about him. No, it was Zadarius Smith. They brought back Preston Williams. They lost Zadarius Smith.
Oh yeah, other way around. Yeah,
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 you're
yeah,
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, they they really didn't add too much to their room either. Obviously, like I said, they lost Devontae Adams and other. Now they're going into this year with Jawan Renfree, Alan Lazard, and Randall Cobb as their top three on the depth chart. Does that scare you?
I think that's a top 3 unit in the league.
Yeah, it's probably. Aaron Rodgers has re-signed for the next 4 years, I believe it was. Got a big contract. Devontae Adams saw that Aaron Rodgers re-signed and then decided to leave. Their defense is still decent, even with losing Zadarius Smith. Their defense is still pretty solid. I could see them. I mean, they got 2 picks in the first round with 22. I think that like just like how you were all bent on the Steelers going with a lineman, I think you have to go with a wide receiver here. I mean, there's no way around it, right? You got to go with a wide receiver at 22. You might even have to go with two because you can't go into
Didn't we
the
say that last year?
oh for that no the year that they took Jordan Love.
Yeah, I mean, feels like it's supposed to happen every year. I mean, honestly, if you look at their team, they should probably take 2 receivers with those picks. For being honest about it, they have a well-rounded enough team where I think they could potentially look at adding an offensive lineman at the back half. That's where you're looking at those guys that some of those guys we've mentioned already. Those kind of back end of the first round linemen. They could use maybe a little more depth there, but they weren't a bad unit. They were kind of average last year, so I could see them shoring that up. But honestly, I mean, I don't think it would be crazy if you saw them take like Traylon Burks and Chris Olave or something like that. Depending, really with those picks, it's kind of dependent on who falls, whether it's Dotson or Burks, Olave. But I legitimately, if I was them and the value was there, I would consider taking 2 receivers.
So I know you mentioned Burks, you mentioned Olave, which like Olave had a pretty good pretty good combine. Burks didn't have a great combine, but he's so like he's got one of the better overall like statures. Had a really good college career. Who do you realistically see them at 22? Because the guy that I have up there is a guy that you're probably going to say is not going to be there, and that's Drake London.
Oh, I mean, if Drake London was there, that'd be an easy pick. But I keep seeing him go higher and higher, so I would be shocked if he was there. But um, yeah, I mean that would be the pick if he was. But yeah, realistically, I think it would be. I would probably say Traylon Burks.
Yeah, that's I I could see that, but I can't really say that because I've been saying all offseason that the Patriots are going with Burks and they picked the one pick right before him. So it's tough for me to say that Burks is going to go to 22 when I keep on saying that Burks is going to 21. The next team up on the list is going to be the Bengals with the 31st overall pick, losing in the Super Bowl to the St. Louis Rams. um, Before the whole free agency and everything started, I think our biggest need that we were going to say for them is going to be offensive line. And while they still could use offensive line, they don't necessarily need to go that way anymore. I don't believe they have definitely beefed it up this offseason. Alex Kappa coming over from Tampa Bay. They brought in Lael Collins from Dallas. They've brought in who else have they brought in? Ted
Yeah.
Karras from the Patriots. They lost C.J. Zoma to the Jets, but they did bring in Hayden Hurst, which I think it's a lateral move, so really didn't downgrade in the tight end department. They're going into this year with their three top receivers again. They're going in there with Joe Mixon again. They beefed up that O line. You got Joe Burrow. I honestly can't find a hole on that offensive side of the ball. And you're picking 31st in the first round. A lot of good players are still going to be there, but a lot of the top dogs are going to be gone by that point. You're pretty much looking at. I mean, this is a true best player available type spot right here, and a guy that you want to tie that fifth year option to. So with that being said, I'm probably looking at edge rusher for him. Now, who's going to be there at that point? Like, because I think we're up to like 4 or 5 names from edge rushers that we've mentioned so far for the first 30 picks here. So you're getting into the next tier of edge rushers, the sixth, seventh, and eighth guys. But I'm thinking edge rusher. I mean, do you have anybody in mind?
Oh, a guy that I like towards the end, and I think he'll go within the last like 8 picks or so. Is Boye Mafe from Minnesota. I've watched a little bit on him, and I think that he's a good value there. Logan Hall has been another name that I've seen thrown around. Those were probably Carl Loftus originally was going that late, but he's steadily creeped up. He's probably my favorite late first pick, but yeah, probably Mafe realistically. Or they're in a situation where if they want to stash a guy like David Ajabo, even though he just got hurt at his pro day, that could have huge upside. And realistically, with that option, it's fine if he doesn't play his rookie season. I mean, this is a guy who people thought had top 5 upside before the season started. It wasn't terrible this year, but he didn't live up to expectations. So, it reminds me a little bit Jeffrey Simmons when the Titans took him. They kind of took him later in the first. They said, we don't need him right now. And I mean, look what he did for him in the playoffs. It worked out. So they're in a position where I think they could take a chance on a guy like that.
Yeah, there's not a lot of holes. They've definitely that's probably one of the most improved teams from this offseason, but not even based on like how many people they brought in, because obviously if you look at the Chargers, you look at a team like the Browns, they're pretty well improved, but the Bengals have attacked the positions that they've been criticized for all year about. So and they
Yeah,
took
I
care of them.
mean, they put on a clinic of how you successfully run an off season this
Hmm.
year. I mean, that's how it should be done. What was everyone saying all playoffs after the Super Bowl? They need to protect Joe Burrow. We need to protect Joe Burrow. And everyone said, oh, it's the Bengals. They're not going to do it. I mean, they went out and did it. So, yeah, I mean, if they're going with the biggest need, they do need a corner. Their secondary isn't very good, and they got picked apart pretty much the entire season. So if they were going based on positional need, that's the biggest hole I see for him. But I think it would be kind of smart to go with a guy like Ajabo at the end, just because he has so much upside, and realistically, they can take a chance like that.
Yeah, that's probably the way that I would lean to um, after listening to you talk. Definitely would go that way. It's I'm excited to see them. I'm excited to see them again. I
I'm
hate
not. I
that
hate Joe Burrow, but that's
I
okay.
hate that they're in my conference, but I am excited to see them. There are a couple teams that do not have picks in the first round via trade. We haven't mentioned the Bears. We haven't mentioned the Browns. I think that's it. Just those two, right? We mentioned the
Yeah.
Packers, Vikings. Okay. So the Bears and the Browns. So we'll talk about the Bears next. The Bears, their first pick is going to be all the way down at number 39 in the second round. I mean, between the Bears and the Browns, I don't have any specific players that I'm targeting because I was kind of just limiting this to only the first round. But I'll go over their needs. I'll go over who they lost, and then if you got any players that you had in mind.
Sure.
So they lost Allen Robinson, wide receiver. They lost James Daniels, that was the guard that Pittsburgh picked up. They lost Jakeem Grant. He went over to Cleveland. They brought in Byron Pringle, so they added. I mean, they kind of replaced Allen Robinson with Byron Pringle. They brought in Trevor Simeon to help back up Justin Fields. I don't know if he's third on the depth chart or not, because they did lose Andy Dalton to the New Orleans Saints. They lost Artie Burns. They lost Damian Williams. They lost a lot. They lost Demir Bird. That might not seem like a huge loss, but it's a decent sized gain because he went to Atlanta, and Atlanta has nobody over there, so he could see some action over there in Atlanta. But they brought in Equanimous St. Brown, the worst of the two St. Browns. They'll get to see each other twice this year now with his brother being in Detroit. But they have, I mean, for not having a lot of picks and not picking until early-ish second round, they have some needs there. They could definitely use help on the defense. They lost Khalil Mack, right?
Yeah, that may or may not be a loss. Yeah. No.
Oh,
Yeah, it's a
that's
pretty big
yeah.
one, I would
I
say.
don't what did he go? Did he get traded?
Yeah, he's with the Chargers
Why didn't they get a first for him? Oh,
because
okay.
they're stupid.
Why am I so confused? So they
Yeah,
got a
they got a
second for him.
second
It looks
round
like.
pick for him.
Oh, you know what? I remember. Okay, yeah, that we were kind of criticizing the package that they got from them. Like just looking at their picks, and I'm like, did they lose Khalil Mack this year? Because they didn't get compensation that made you think that they lost Khalil Mack.
No. Yeah, no, that kind of goes along with what I was going to say anyway. This franchise is embarrassing right now, if we're being honest about it. And it makes me mad because Justin Fields is my boy, but I think they're going to ruin his career. And I haven't said that out loud yet. I've been kind of keeping that close to me because I was obsessed with Justin Fields in college and him coming out. So, but I think the Bears are going to ruin him. That offensive line is bad. He's got Darnell Mooney, who was very impressive last year, but that's not going to cut it. Not just Darnell Mooney,
That's
but
one of those wide receiver rooms that are worse than the Lions.
yeah, I would.
I mean, one-on-one,
If
Mooney
you
versus
include T.J. Hawkinson, yeah. If you're just talking receivers, I don't know, but if you throw just their pass catchers,
Komet and Hawkinson are not too far apart, I guess.
they are. They're very far apart right now.
No, Detroit's
Cole,
close to Chicago.
what do I know? I don't know
No,
geography.
the wide receiver rooms are probably they're similar, but I would say Chicago's is worse. Like I said, what we saw from Amon-Ra St. Brown is pretty good, and then they brought in DJ Chark. We've seen him be somewhat successful.
That's
He's
true.
got a little
Chark is a
injury
good
history.
or better than any of the Bears' second at this point. So yeah, but I mean, when you look at it, the Bears, at least their defense was pretty good last year. But then they lost Khalil Mack, and
You
it's
sure that
like,
was this year?
Are you sure?
You sure they lost Khalil Mack this year?
Final answer, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, their defense is going to be worse. Their offensive line stinks. Their pass catching options are worse. They're going to ruin Justin Fields, and I think they are contenders to have the number one overall pick next year.
Ooh, that's I don't know because you said it yourself. Their defense wasn't too bad last year. I would put their defense better than the Texans, and the offense is not. The offenses are about even, so I'd probably say that the Bears find a couple more wins there. Texans are going to be
Hey,
picking top two
there's my
next year.
bold prediction. The Bears are contenders for the number one overall pick. I
That's
mean,
not too bold.
realistically, they what?
That's not too bold.
Oh, it's not okay. Yeah, I mean, the thing I'll give it up for the Texans though, they played with heart last year. Though I don't care what anyone says, is they were actually playing and fighting until the very end, and I respect that. And I think the Bears, and I mean, granted, it's going to be a new regime, and hopefully they play with a little more spirit. But yeah, I mean, if they play how they did last year,
Well,
yeah,
they also got addition by subtraction by not having Nagy there anymore.
I mean, it really is.
It's like the Adam Gase all over again. We'll see him be improved just because they don't have Nagy. The thing that I don't like is they brought in a coach that specialty is on the side of the ball that they're actually good in. You know, like
Yeah,
why did they bring in an offensive coach, especially with your young quarterback? That's I don't I don't necessarily like that all the time that happens whenever we say. And there's like bunch of new coaches this year. A bunch of guys. I mean, they could have went out and got Bieniemy to help out with Justin Fields. They could have got Dable to help out with Justin Fields. I think that was one of my predictions that they would get Dable. But
hmm
why? Like, I mean, obviously, like the Bears defense isn't the Bears defense of the mid and early 2000s that we know, but the defense is going to be better than the offense. And I know you got to think a lot longer than just a couple of years, but you, they should have brought in a head coach that could have worked with Justin Fields on the offensive side of the ball, and then had his coordinator lead the defense and help him out there. That's so. I mean, that was a bad move right there.
Yeah,
Um,
I hope I'm wrong, but I think they're going to ruin Justin Fields. I hope I'm wrong.
Trade him to the Rams.
Yeah, sure.
All right. The last team that we have to talk about is the Browns. They don't have their first round pick because they traded for Deshaun Watson. Um, And then they also brought in Jacoby Brissett. They also brought in Joshua Dobbs. They also still have Baker Mayfield. So I think they're going to be running some four quarterback sets this year. They lost Austin Hooper. We already mentioned, or no, we didn't mention him. We mentioned Hayden Hurst, but Austin Hooper is now gone to Tennessee. They brought in Jakeem Grant. They lost Odell Beckham Jr. They lost Jarvis Landry. So but they did bring in Amari Cooper via
I
trade.
just like to watch you struggle. I was like, I got it, but
I
I
was
like
gonna
to watch
say
you
I was
struggle.
gonna say Allen Robinson for some reason, but I guess Allen Robinson and Amari Cooper aren't too far apart either. Um, they even lost Rashard Higgins, so their wide receiver room isn't that top notch right now. Even outside of Amari Cooper, it's let me just bring it up. What other needs he got for them? I mean, wide receiver is definitely going to be a need that I got off the top of my head. Their quarterback is pretty much all taken care of now, um, even if they run all four of them. But you're going into the season with Amari Cooper, Donovan Peoples Jones. Like I said, they brought in Jakeem Grant. So wide receiver is probably my biggest need. You still have two very good young running backs in Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb. The defense was pretty good last year.
Mhm.
They not a lot of huge holes on the defense. Miles Garrett is still one of the best defenders in the league. Their secondary is still the biggest thing. Like, and that was another thing too with that Deshaun Watson trade. One of the names that we've been seeing possibly thrown around was Denzel Ward
Mhm.
as a return in whoever was gonna. Well, I guess if it was gonna be Cleveland, they would be the one trading Denzel Ward. But whoever was gonna get Deshaun Watson is probably gonna have to give up a couple young pieces, not just draft picks. They got him for just draft picks.
Mhm.
So they keep their whole secondary with Delpit, Ward, Greedy Williams. So, I mean, their defense is going to be pretty good as long as they could all stay healthy. The health is their biggest factor. All of their defensive backs have missed some kind of time within their short careers so far. But if they all stay healthy, they're a top five. They're a top five secondary unit, and then you got one of the best edge rushers in the league with Miles Garrett. So, my top priority is probably outside of protecting Deshaun Watson, which they do have a top offensive line, um, is probably wide receiver.
Yeah, definitely offensively, they could use another receiver. That's probably it, honestly. I mean, they had their offensive line was ranked 8th last year. They didn't really lose any pieces. It's a very good offensive line. Defensively, their defensive line outside of Miles Garrett is okay. They could probably use another interior defensive lineman. You'll probably see them snag a defensive tackle with one of their first picks, and then probably an edge rusher slash linebacker. They have a hole there as well. So, but yeah, I mean, I'm pretty excited. And I mean, it sounds weird to say that because you can't say anything positive about Deshaun Watson. But the reality is, putting everything behind, I mean, not that we shouldn't take it seriously or whatever, but I mean, that was my boy before. I loved watching Deshaun Watson play. And with Deshaun Watson, I don't care what anyone says, the Browns are Super Bowl contenders. They had a very solid roster, and I think Deshaun Watson makes that much of a difference. I mean, he took some very crappy Texans, Bill O'Brien teams to the playoffs multiple years in a row. And if you look at those rosters, I mean, yes, they had JJ Watt on defense, but I mean, the team overall was very questionable to say the least. So, uh, I mean, I don't think it's crazy to say that. I don't know if people are necessarily talking about them as Super Bowl contenders, but if Deshaun Watson plays, I think that's, and he's still Deshaun Watson, I think that's the reality. He's still, because of all of this, I mean, I used to say he was the most underrated quarterback before all of this happened. Now, with even more cloud over him, I think people are forgetting how good he is. In my opinion, he's a top 5 quarterback in this league when he's playing and at his best. And people are probably would go nuts if they heard me say that. But I mean, watch the guy play, and I feel like we didn't because he played for the Texans. But he's he did it at Clemson. He was a winner. He was winning in Houston despite a lackluster roster. So yeah, this team realistically. Yeah, I mean, they could use probably a slot guy. I don't have a problem if they go into the season with Donovan Peoples-Jones as the other guy on the outside because he intrigued me enough last year where I think he deserves an opportunity to play. So realistic, Jakeem Grant's not bad, but he's more of a return guy. I mean, he's one of the best return guys in the league right now. I believe he made the Pro Bowl for it last year. So that's really where his value is at. But yeah, add a slot receiver, a defensive lineman, a linebacker, you're good to go.
And another name to just throw out there who's played with Deshaun Watson already, not in the draft, but Will Fuller.
Yeah, I think that's going to happen.
You
Yeah.
think so?
Especially with Tyreek Hill going over to Miami.
The thing is, I don't know what their cap situation is, but it's got to be getting close because of the huge $230 million guarantee from Deshaun
That
Watson.
doesn't have an
So
impact.
that's
Money's.
probably
Have you seen what the Rams do? There's not even a salary cap
yeah.
anymore.
No, that's definitely true. Um, so that pretty much sums it up for us for all four or all 8 divisions. We did 2 of them together, then we did 2 of them separately, and it was a fun little series. The worst part about it, and what I hate about doing this, everything changes so fast. Like just
Yeah.
2 weeks ago, we wouldn't have even been talking about. Maybe it was more than 2 weeks ago, but say we did this. Say this was our first division that we did. Devontae Adams and Deshaun Watson would have been on the Packers and the Browns respectively still,
Mhm.
and everything that we said then would have been just irrelevant now.
Yeah, just think about the changes in the West. I believe that's one of the ones that we did together. And was it?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it was. I mean, the Broncos didn't have Russell Wilson. I believe when we did that episode, the Chiefs still had Tyreek Hill.
No, I
Devontae.
think you know what I think the Chiefs had Tyreek Hill, that was for sure, but I think Wilson was traded like honestly it might have been that day that we were talking or the
It
day
was
before
very close. I can't
because
remember.
we
I remember us
like our list
talking.
still had Denver needing a quarterback.
Yeah, it was very close, but Devonte Adams wasn't in Las Vegas. I was gonna say Oakland, but I didn't. So yeah, I mean it does change very very quickly.
Woods was still with the Rams.
Yeah,
That's a new
yeah. I
one
mean the
there.
Rams didn't have Allen Robinson. They didn't sign Bobby Wagner.
So just so many things change. It's the same thing with these mock drafts too. Every other day that goes by, I'm reading the scroll on the bottom of NFL.com or the bottom of ESPN or NFL Network and seeing like Bucky Brooks has changed his draft again. It's like so who first thing I look for is the Bills pick. So like who does he got to the Bills at 25? And I've seen maybe three different cornerbacks. I've seen one or two wide receivers. I've seen Brees Hall just in all these different mock drafts, and it's only been probably about a month right now. So it's so crazy how much has changed within that month. What day are we at? We're
Yeah,
at the
I
8th.
agree with you, and that's why I'm okay with people focusing on specific prospects that they like this time of year. But I feel like a mock draft probably, I don't want to say isn't relevant, but I feel like we're starting to approach.
Oh, I don't know what he was going to say. I don't know what happened to his laptop. Probably died. But we were just about to wrap up, anyways. We have one more episode before the draft actually happens. So 2 weeks. Today's the 8th. We are on again on the 22nd. What we were gonna do that episode is it's funny because he got kicked out right as he was about to mention something about um, mock drafts being irrelevant. But that day on the 22nd, we're gonna have our final mock draft because that is only a couple days before the NFL draft. The NFL draft is on the 28th. That's the first round. So we'll probably do a 1 or 2 round mock draft on the 22nd with you guys. Um, kind of just hopefully by then all the pre-draft trades and everything is all taken care of. Any more free agents that need to be signed are taken care of, and we could just go into that day and have the most accurate mock draft that we can. And then, of course, the 28th is going to be round one, and that's when the actual draft is going to happen. So we will be doing that on the 22nd. So next week, you guys got the other show on Friday. We're going to have our draft on the 22nd. And then and then the next time we're on after that is going to be in May. Baseball is going to be in a full swing. Hockey and NBA are going to be in the playoffs. So we'll be able to talk some bets for you guys then. And that's about it. So we will see you guys in 2 weeks. Thank you.